Gear up for Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. It's your final word on sports all across the state. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now here are your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Simple day when you look back on it and how we kind of pieced our way around the golf course, but a lot easier said than done. It's going to be a fun week. I like the way this course suits my game.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Thursday evening. First day of play at the U.S. Open, Wisconsin, the USGA.
And it sounds like Corn's line dropped there, so we will welcome you into the program here from our Columbia studios. Kevin McCrary and the Professor Tom Hayes at your service tonight as we wind down the week. As Corn mentioned, the opening round of the U.S. Open winding down as well. And we were talking to George Bryan III last night, and he said he didn't think many people would be at par and that below par might actually win it, but you would not. Looking at the scores today, a lot of really good numbers on the board, including Ricky Fowler's 7 under that has him in the lead. So we'll give you the rundown, let you know how the locals did. There are a lot of locals in the field. None bigger, Corn, than Dustin Johnson, the reigning champ. He did not have a great round today. 3 over par for him. Normally that wouldn't be a terrible opening round at the U.S. Open, but when there's a 7 under on the board, it's a pretty brutal round. All right, we still don't have Corn. No, okay.
I'm with you. No, I'm with you. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Usually the early rounds of the U.S. all the rounds in the Open typically are even par, a little bit over, just a little bit under. You go out and shoot 65 the first day at a course like this, and you put yourself in great shape. Ricky Fowler, another one of those great golfers who's never won a major. Now he is trying to do what Dustin Johnson did a year ago and break through and win that first major championship in the U.S. Open. I heard you mention George Bryan with us last night. He'll be back with us tonight. He's out in Wisconsin. Of course, he's got professional interests with just being out there with the pros, and he's got his son out there playing as well. We'll check on Wesley and the other scorers from the local contingent as well. So we got plenty of golf to talk about as the national championship is underway. And, of course, South Carolina still without a baseball coach today, and I think it's going to be something that continues for more days to come. As we told you earlier in the week that Ray Tanner would be heading to Omaha to be out there at the World Series, and indeed he is, and that's going to tie him up until the first part of next week at least. Not saying he won't get any work done towards finding a new coach out there, but I think you can safely expect no announcement from South Carolina at the earliest before Wednesday of next week if he can get something done that quickly. Mike Morgan will join us. Morgan on the move. I'm sure he'll have some things to say about the World Series, the teams that are out there, the USC situation as well. USC football got a commitment today. Wyatt Campbell, big offensive lineman from Lugoff Elgin, committed to USC. We'll talk about that in the recruiting segment a little bit later on. The Panthers wrapped up their mini camp. Christian McCaffrey got his first work in as a Panther. Of course, he couldn't participate until after he finished up his schoolwork at Stanford. And so he got some work in today, and we'll hear from him and get his thoughts about his first taste of the NFL. So there you go. That's what we have on the agenda for you tonight. Another exciting edition of Sports Talk. Our phone number, 800-956-7266. You can email us as well, talkback@sportstalksc.com. On Twitter, our Twitter location is @SportsTalkSC. So, guys, the search continues at USC for its new baseball coach. Since the last time I was with you, wasn't with you last night, it looks like Eric Backish has come off the spitball wall. One of the names that was thrown out there early didn't stick.
Yeah, well, he wasn't.
As I'm sure a lot of those that were mentioned early will not stick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was never a candidate, according to reporting from the BigSpur.com's John Whittle. Never interviewed, never offered the job, and does look like there might have been some interest with Stanford, but I think he was ATM in Michigan, as Pro pointed out yesterday, to get a little extension there where he will stay.
But the weird thing about that is, obviously, that was his chance to get back home, because I think Backish is originally from San Jose, California, or whatever. That would have been right in his hometown's back door, but apparently Stanford was not good enough to get him. And obviously there's some interesting things about Stanford. Of course, you got to recruit to the GPA and all the other stuff. It might have turned him off. And, of course, the cost of living in Northern California. Maybe the money goes a longer way, Corn, in Ann Arbor, Michigan. By the way, he did get the 5-year extension with the Wolverines, so that that may mean something too.
Yeah. So the Gamecocks move forward. Really no idea where this is headed at this particular time. Ray Tanner being a one-man committee with this thing, I don't believe he's sharing information with anybody, not with his most closest confidants, guys like Jerry Myers or former assistants that have been with him. You know, people I'm sure are reaching out to him all the time, trying to pull information from him. He's being very closed-mouthed about this thing, as you should be as an athletic director, running your own search. And I think the process will lead to him getting to some interviews here before not too much longer down the road, perhaps even while he's out in Omaha. Maybe while he's out in Omaha, too, he can work under the cloud of darkness, so to speak, being away from Columbia, away from any media attention over this way. Everybody's going to be focused on the teams out there in Omaha and not keeping an eye on what Ray Tanner's doing, and he can perhaps sneak some coaches in and out at a place in Nebraska and get some work done. Who knows? But I wouldn't think anything's going to happen before he gets back into town next week, and we'll see what happens with that. The good news is for South Carolina guys, now the draft is over. The Gamecocks were not hurt badly by the draft in terms of their everyday players. Now their pitching staff, of course, was rocked by the draft, but their everyday lineup, if you believe that the everyday lineup can come back next year and have a much better year as a group, you might say, well, this is the same everyday lineup that didn't make a tournament this year. What makes you think they can do better next year? But sometimes I think it's the nature of baseball. Teams collectively go into a slump. Then all of a sudden the next year somebody breaks out and people follow. And I got to believe that next year's lineup that will no doubt feature Cortez and Olsen in particular. You do know now that you'll have your first look. The entire Gamecock infield. This is either good or bad depending on how you look at it. The entire infield is back. First base is back. Second base is back. Short is back. Third is back. Catcher will be back. Yeah. And then your corner outfielder is back. Your center fielder is back. I mean, everybody returns. I know Destino was picked. I guess he's going to sign. Yeah, he's going to sign. But everybody else should be back.
Yeah, and I don't think it's bad. I mean, this whole notion that the South Carolina baseball team was bad last season, they weren't swept at all. You look at the teams in Omaha and how many of those teams the Gamecocks were right there with. They just didn't get over the hump. They had injuries. You can't ignore the injuries to Schmidt and Tyler Johnson. Cullen was banged up most of the year. Hopkins. So they're going to be right where the Gamecock baseball program is each and every year. They'll be in the thick of things next year. Where they end up, we'll see. But the program never had dipped, and some good recruits that the previous staff had brought in are going to be there. So they'll be fine next year, whoever is coaching them.
All right, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, 800-956-7266 is our phone number if you'd like to join in on this Thursday night. Lines talk about the coaching search at USC, talk a little summertime football, looking ahead to the start of football practice here a few weeks down the road. Of course, the players who've enrolled at summer school at their respective universities are hard at work getting ready. South Carolina and Clemson rolling out the hype videos. I'm telling you, if you look at the hype videos, you see no way that they won't score a touchdown every time they touch the ball, and you see no way the opponent will ever score a touchdown against them because they're working hard. They're sweating like dogs out there. They rise, work late. This is just all off the hype videos I'm talking about. Whether or not that turns another story. What happens with hype videos when your team goes 3-9? You still use hype videos when you're 3-9?
You just erase over the recordings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's all you do.
You need more hype. If you're 3-9, that means you didn't make enough hype videos, or the videos did not have enough hype. It's all about the amount of hype in the video.
By the way, ESPN has another award show coming this, I guess next year. It's going to be who won the All Hype Video Award.
They should show to recognize all the great people they fired in the last year and give them awards, because that's some of the most talented people they had in their organization. On to the U.S. Open leaderboard as we are winding down the first day of play out in Wisconsin at a very, very difficult golf course that is made even more difficult by the people of USGA, who grew this fescue, serving as sort of a third cut of rough, I guess you can say. And, man, if you miss the fairway and you miss the first couple of layers of rough and you get in that stuff, you are dead. I mean, I've watched Dustin Johnson today just flail away at his golf ball stuck in that stuff. I mean, you just can't move it. If you can find it, you just can't move it. It's like a two-stroke penalty. You might as well be out of bounds or something if you get in that stuff. I know earlier in the week the golfers some of them were complaining about it, thinking it was a bit too much to deal with. But it is what it is, and that's what the USGA has dealt the golfers. Ricky Fowler, a 7-under 65. He was in the early wave, along with Brian Harmon, who shot 5-under 67. Along with Tommy Fleetwood and Brooks Koepka. So that's the top of your leaderboard. 65, 367s right now. Mark Leishman's on the course at 5-under through 14. Patrick Reed leads the 4-under crowd in the clubhouse, 4-under 68. Kevin Na on the course at 4-under. He's through 14 holes. And that is the absolute top of the leaderboard. Lee was on in 3-under 69. Charlie Hoffman and Brant Snedeker and Ernie Els, they are in at 2-under 70. William McGirt, former Wofford standout, he's on the course at 2-under as he is through 14 holes to. We see the fourth. How about this? We've gone from the third to the fourth. Davis Love the fourth with his dad on the bag. He went out and shot a 1-under 71 today. That's pretty good. Russell Henley from down the low country, 1-under through 13 holes today. Let's check the South Carolina contingent a little more closely. Bill Haas, 1-under through 12. And Wesley Bryan is 1-over through 13. Kevin Kisner, he finished at 2-over 74. Lucas Glover, 2-over 74. Dustin Johnson, who we referred to earlier, 3-over 75 for the defending champion. He had his troubles with the fescue today. And some other notables we keep an eye on. Jim Furyk, 1-under through 10. Rory McIlroy is even as he makes the turn. Jordan Spieth had it at 1-under for a while. He finishes at 1-over 73. Bubba Watson is 1-over through 12. And Jason Day is 3-over through 9. And Adam Scott is 4 over through 12. So those are some of the more meaningful scores. Did you guys get a chance to watch some of it today and see that fescue and how tough it is to get out of it?
Yeah, although when I was watching, I was watching those guys shoot real low scores. I mean, George Bryan said that the USGA could trick this thing out and make it as hard as they want. I think they might be sitting around a back room with a brandy and a cigar trying to figure out what they're going to do tomorrow to make things a little tougher outside of Mother Nature. They're going to have to move the pins, move the tees back, do whatever they can to make it a little more difficult. You watch US Open, I want to see people struggling to make par, not tear the course up. If this thing ends up with a guy winning at 10, 11 under par, that would not be, to me, very good for the USGA.
Well, isn't it the same thing happened in the first couple of rounds last year in Pennsylvania when the scores were usually low and then suddenly the course started biting at people? I just imagine that this year, Corn, they wanted to lull people into a false sense of security. And once they hit that course tomorrow and see the pin placements, they say, uh-oh, here we go.
I think I'm pretty sure. Continues. Yes, you had some great scores shot today by guys who went out in the morning. They'll flip it around and go out in the afternoon tomorrow, where it's no doubt more difficult. A couple of more scores to mention. Another one from South Carolina, Kyle Thompson, 3 over par, the former Gamecock, 3 over par. He's through 16 holes today. And we also have in the tournament Matthew Campbell from Newberry College, and he shot a 5 over 77 for him. Ordinarily, you shoot 77 in the Open, you kind of feel like you're in the hunt, but not when the leader goes and does what Ricky Fowler did today and kind of puts some distance from himself and the majority of the field. Still, there's people close to him after his 65, but and again, there's some others in there 5 and 4. I got to believe, especially if the conditions, it gets hotter as the weekend progresses and maybe conditions worsen, fatigue and pressure start to set in. I think you'll see this thing kind of settle down and maybe slip back towards maybe 1 or 2 under par to win this thing. But we'll see. Maybe this is going to be the year that you take it to the woodshed and win with a very low number. We'll get the feel out there from George Bryan III, who's on the course, been walking the course the last couple of days. And I know he was with you guys yesterday to sort of set the stage for it, and we'll get with him to talk about what it feels like out there, some of the reaction that he's hearing from people and all as well. In fact, do we have some comments from Dustin Johnson? Am I to understand that we have some comments from Dustin Johnson? Okay, I do not understand that we have comments from Dustin Johnson. For some reason, I thought we had comments from Dustin Johnson. Maybe DJ just wasn't going to comment. A note from USC women's basketball, the Knoxville News Sentinel, reporting that assistant coach at Tennessee, a former standout in our state, Jolette Law, is coming to South Carolina to join Dawn Staley's staff, replacing Nikki McCray-Penson, who's now the head coach at Old Dominion. And so the USC women getting a basketball transfer recently from UT in Taya Cooper. And now they're going to get one of the all-time great basketball players from our state, Jolette Law. If I'm not mistaken, I think she played at Wilson High School. And I don't remember where she went collegiately. Did she go to North Carolina? I'd have to look that up. She was a great player in high school, as I recall.
I'm almost sure she did.
She was the head coach at Illinois. Yeah, head coach at Illinois, and was fired there 5 years ago, and then joined the Tennessee staff after that. And now she's coming to South Carolina to fill the vacancy there. So all the assistant basketball jobs in the state now seem to be filled up. Frank Martin hired his guy, or is hiring his guy. Looks like Brad Brownell is getting his guy, and now Dawn Staley's got her person in place as well. All right, we'll hit a break and be back. 800-956-7266 is the number here on Sports Talk. You're right. Okay, back we are, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, here on a Thursday night, kind of cruising through a South Carolina, hot and humid, with pop-up thunderstorms flashing across the
All right, sounds like Corn's line has dropped again, so when we get him back, we will go back to him, and we will open up the phone lines for you as well, 800-956-7266. Reach out, grab a line. There is a couple of open lines there for you. Let's welcome in Mike Morgan, our Morgan on the Move segment, coming your way right now. As Mike, do you finally get a chance to catch your breath a little bit?
I am exhaling, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, after a lengthy stretch of games and weekends and one season into the next. Had a really good time at College Station. I can't say enough about two things. Number one, the Texas A&M crowd. It is unbelievable what they do at Bluebell Park. It's really unlike any other environment. And number two, hats off to Davidson. They took game one to 15 innings, easily could have won that one. They had a 6-2 lead in the second game, easily could have won that one. They were not just a dark horse. They were a team that was talented enough where they could have made Omaha, which would have been one of the best stories in the history of that event. So a lot of fun there, and now looking forward to just watching some games as opposed to calling them.
Yeah, I was watching that game Friday night. A heck of a job on the call, and I just got the feeling with Davidson and their pitching depth that if they didn't find a way to win that marathon, that they were going to be in serious trouble. They were up against it anyway, but they worked so hard to come back in that one. You felt like they almost had to have it to have any sort of chance to get to Omaha.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I was surprised that they were able to bounce back the next day, and because they had one ace, as you would expect, a kid that was far above the rest. Typically, those programs that size, they don't have the pitching depth, and certainly they didn't have it. But the kid that went on day two, kind of a crafty lefty, went fairly deep into the game, and they just hit. I mean, they knocked out J.B. Bukowskis of North Carolina, #1 draft pick. They hit everybody that they faced in Chapel Hill. They hit Texas A&M, who led the Southeastern Conference in earned run average. They hit them in both games. So a team that, again, has fewer than 3 scholarship players was able to hit against some of the best pitching staffs in the country. And that's something that really is unique to college baseball and only college baseball, because that is the equivalent of a basketball team with 2 scholarship players making it to the Sweet 16. And there's simply no equivalent in football that you can even make, because those type of stories don't happen in today's day and age. Power 5 versus Group 5, you don't have the true Cinderella. But we had that in Davidson. They made for a heck of a story.
Well, sometimes I guess the proof is a team is good when they win a game they're not supposed to. And when I thought Texas A&M opened the door with that error, and then Davidson hit him with that 6th spot, I thought Davidson was going to really steal that first game from him. But Mike, looking at some of the teams I've seen, always loved Louisville's aggressiveness at the plate. You had a chance to see him last year in the Super Regionals in that upset by Santa Barbara. But I gotta say, I still don't see how Oregon State gets that team together up in the Pacific Northwest, and they made Vanderbilt look ordinary in the 2 games they played.
Their pitching is just lights out, and what Coach Casey has done in Corvallis is as good a job building a program as maybe any coach running has done. I don't know what Oregon State baseball was before he got there, but I know what it is since he's been there, and they are a true power. They've already won 2 national titles. They had a staff ERA of under 2 in the Pac-12 conference. That's amazing. And of course, now they're doing it with a lot of adversity and missing their #1 guy, who, as I understand now, is not even making the trip to Omaha. So that'll be interesting to see how they're able to overcome that. But without knowing a ton about their offense, because it's not a team I saw in person, I do know a lot about their pitching, and for the most part, it's second to none.
And I think we have Corn back
we do.
with us.
We do. I think.
Corn, are you with us?
Okay, there he is. All right, we don't have Corn back. I hear him there. Jared, where is he? Okay. All right, Mike. Well, I guess Corn does not want to talk to you tonight.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that Corn has given me the silent treatment. It's the kind of guy that holds a grudge, and I hope that someday he'll overcome that animosity and will be willing to talk when I'm on the segment.
Well, while we got you here, of course, we could talk about the baseball draft. Any surprises or anything that stands out to you, especially in the first round?
Yes, the fact that the Braves got Kyle Wright from Vanderbilt at number 5. This is a kid that was talked about as the number 1 overall pick for much of the year, and instead 3 high school kids go in the top 3 picks, paving the way for Wright. I thought that was a steal. He's easily one of the most major league ready-made players in this draft. He's got electric stuff. I mean, he's got everything you could ask for, and we all know that Vanderbilt players, particularly pitchers, have been fast-tracked to the major leagues. So that is a guy, barring injuries and unforeseen setbacks, that I think you'll see pitching at SunTrust Park in a Braves uniform within the next couple of years.
And Mike, now that the Omaha field is set, who is your pick to win the College World Series?
Oh, gosh. Whoever I pick, you can bet against it. I mean, I wouldn't have predicted Coastal last year. I would not have predicted Virginia. I would not have predicted UCLA. I mean, I can't remember the last time the team that I thought would win this thing actually won it.
You didn't pick Coastal last year? I thought for sure you picked Coastal Carolina last year.
Yeah, sure. I had them all the way. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd go LSU. I had them the final 2 weeks of the regular season, and they were as impressive as anybody I've seen. They're balanced. They're old. They have leadership. They have intangibles. They haven't won one since 2009, which, around LSU, it's like panic time. I guess if I had to pick one team, it would be LSU.
All right. I think we really do have Cornblue back now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I apologize, guys. We've had some technical issues, maybe weather related. I don't know. Maybe I need to pay the IT bill around here and things would work smoother. Mike, what do you make anything out of the fact that Ray Tanner has, of course, he's in Omaha with the committee, but do you think while they're doing his job with the committee, he's also going to be doing his job as USC's AD and taking steps in his search for a new head coach?
Oh, I don't think there's any question that's going to be precedent number 1. It's just to keep his eye on the job search, and where that's going, only he knows. I've heard a ton of rumors, some which I believe have some validity, some which I think are completely just throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. Obviously, there could be a coaching candidate or two that are in Omaha, and really, when you look at it, there is no hurry now. Alabama and Tennessee already filled their positions. None of which I think would be considered, sexy hires, solid hires. Both schools need recruiting guys, and they got assistant coaches. But you're not really competing with anybody at this point other than yourself. So he can just kind of lay back, sit back, and analyze the situation, go for choice number 1. If that doesn't happen, go for choice 2, and so on. But I'm sure that's an everyday event that might have a lot of different little wrinkles to it in terms of who he wants. I'm sure he knows. I'm sure he's got his own top 5 list, but who he wants versus who is willing to leave their current post, that's another situation entirely.
All right, hang on, Mike. We'll come back to you. Talk for a few more minutes. Mike, brought to you here on Sports Talk by Play It Again Sports in Columbia, where they buy, sell, and trade what you want. And by Founders Federal Credit Union. Check out foundersfcu.com and learn how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. We'll hit this break. We'll be right back. All right, quick look at the leaderboard at the Open. Once again, before we get back to Mike, Ricky Fowler still your leader, 7 under 65. Brian Harmon, Tommy Fleetwood, and Brooks Koepka, 5 under 67. And not too many golfers can make much of a challenge right now. Marshman, he's on the course at 5 under. And Kevin Na, Paul Casey on the course at 4 under. They could get up there in the mix a little bit more. It looks like it's pretty safe that Ricky Fowler is going to carry the lead into the round number 2 of the U.S. Open. Back to Mike Morgan here on Sports Talk. Morgan on the move on this Thursday. Our poll question is on our website. Who must Ray Tanner hire as USC's new baseball coach regardless of the costs? Who must he hire? The majority of the voting has come in on Kevin O'Sullivan with over 30%.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I was going to ask Mike to handicap that for us. Give us – listen, you were in Florida.
Who else is on your poll question, just out of curiosity?
Well, yeah, Tim Corbin, Monty Lee, Dan McDonald, Jim Schlossnagel, Brian O'Connor, Eric Bakich was there, but he's taken his name out.
What about Joe Madden? Is he on there or no? No.
Tom Walter. And then we have the category of other, where, of course, you can enter your own choice, which that's a wide variety of names on that list. I can promise you that. But my question to you is, from your expert knowledge and having just been in Gainesville for a extended period going back a couple of weeks, chances of Kevin O saying so long and goodbye to Gainesville to come to South Carolina. What do you think?
Unless there is some family X factor that I know has been talked about, I would say slim and none. That family X factor would have to be so strong to take a coach who's already getting paid. The whole notion that you're just going to outbid all these schools for the coach you want is somewhat of a fallacy. Louisville's not going to get outbid for their baseball coach. Florida's not going to get outbid for their baseball coach. TCU's not going to get outbid for their baseball coach. I could go on and on and on. So it's not like you're just going to walk in there as a Daddy Warbucks and say, yeah, you're making 1.1 or you're making 950, but we're going to double that. That's not reality. If Kevin O'Sullivan leaves, it's because he's ready for a change and it's because of some type of desire to be back in the state of South Carolina. I've talked to him a number of times the last few years. He doesn't strike me as a guy who's unhappy. And he makes a lot of money. He's from Jupiter. They've been in Omaha 6 times in 8 years. You know, the only knock on that program is simply the stadium is bottom third in the league. And it's hard to believe that a program like Florida would let that happen, but it has happened. Now, they're supposed to pump a bunch of money into it 2 years from now, and maybe that's the solution. But regardless of the stadium or the lack of fan support or lack of anything, he's still going to Omaha just about every year, and he's still getting paid a lot to do it. So I would not see that as a favorite, but I know a lot of people seem to feel very strongly that there's some hidden connection or some family factor that could be the overriding factor. And if that's true, that's a new one on me. That's news to me. Based on everything else I know, to me, that would be a very hard get.
So, and you're right. And also you got to factor in the money that South Carolina would have to pay. You're talking for this particular candidate or this person. I don't like to call people candidates just because somebody has thrown a name out there. You're not a candidate unless you've actually interviewed for the job or you've had contact with the person during doing the hiring. This entire long list of names out there, those are not all candidates. Maybe a few people on there are. But anyway, going back to O'Sullivan, you're talking about an expense for South Carolina at the top just to get him to Columbia of over $2 million. Now, do you think South Carolina is willing to go that deep in the budget for a baseball coach?
That seems rather high, but my point would be if for some reason they were, I don't see Florida getting outbid for a baseball coach. There's nothing to lead me to believe that would happen, which goes to my original point, which is that many of the names on your list and the list of other folks out there seem to assume that South Carolina is the only school willing to spend a lot of money on a baseball coach. That might have been the case 10 years ago. It's not anymore. Power 5 schools that have successful programs and successful coaches are willing to pony up. I mean, whoever thought we'd get to a point in time where women's basketball coaches were making over $500,000 a year. And on the whole, on the average, women's basketball loses by far more money than any other sport in college athletics. Even the ones you think are making money are typically losing. Baseball programs, there are some that, believe it or not, turn a profit. And ADs are willing to spend above and beyond, even if it doesn't, even if it does put your program technically in the red. They don't want to lose their coach to another program because that's an indictment on them if you let it happen. Just as if South Carolina's next coach winds up going to a handful of trips to the College World Series in 8 years, do you think somebody's going to go in there and poach their coach away from Ray Tanner? I doubt it. I mean, the next coach at South Carolina, if he has that kind of success, he's not going anywhere. They're not going to let him go. And that's the same outlook that I see for most of the other programs that have coaches being mentioned as a potential candidate for the job.
All right, let me ask you this. What is the possibility, in your opinion, that Tanner checks out these other, vets these other possibilities of people outside of his circle of comfort, doesn't particularly find anything that really blows him away, or someone that he could get, and turns back into somebody within his coaching circle of the last 30 years?
I don't see that happening. I think there's too many other really good candidates that are coaches of non-preeminent programs, high-profile assistants, or coaches, like a Coach Walters of Wake Forest. That's just an example of what we're talking here, because we know Wake is not going to spend $1 million on a baseball coach, unlike a Florida, a TCU, a Louisville, et cetera. I don't think Ray is that. This is not a guy who has to hire a search firm. He's not a guy who has to panic. He will bring in a good baseball coach. This is a guy that discovered Monty Lee when nobody knew who the heck Monty Lee was. He brought in Mark Calvey when very few people knew who he was. And even though Mark was lambasted by the fan base, the guy has gone on to South Alabama and is leading them to postseasons. He will find somebody who will be a very good candidate. It just might not be the name, quote unquote, that some people are throwing out there and assuming that you're just going to be able to poach him away from a school who's already going to Omaha.
Why is nobody talking about Jim Toman? He was a fan favorite. The fans loved him when he was at South Carolina. He's fiery. He was the top recruiter, brought in all the stud players of the first World Series run, and many of the ones who went in the second World Series
the fans
run.
used to love Chad Holbrook when he had Jim Toman's job.
Well, that's true. And
it's
he
a
goes
little
to
different when
Liberty
you're
and
sitting in that top step.
37 wins a season.
I think, first of all, I would not outrule Jim Toman as an assistant by any means. Jim Toman is a remarkable recruiter. And I'm shocked that Jim Toman has not gotten an assistant job in the SEC the last few years. To me, that's an oversight, because one thing I know about Jim Toman, the moment he steps on campus and is picking up that phone, he's going to bring in some top-notch talent. I don't doubt that. But you're talking about a program that has reached a level where they're going to be, I assume, looking for head coaches that have had very high success at a Power 5 school, or the hottest of the hot in current assistant coaches, which if you look at what Kentucky and Mississippi State did this year, I'll bet you nobody was celebrating those hires in Lexington or Starkville. But guess what? They were two of the best coaches all year long in the SEC, if not the country. So don't get so caught up on the name. There are a lot of great coaches out there that are not currently the head coach of a dominating program in college baseball.
Okay, Mike, we thank you as always for your thoughts. And we will, unless you're going on vacation. Are you going on vacation?
I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'll be around though one way or another. I'll figure something out.
All right, then we'll talk to you next week. Top of the hour break. We'll be back. Actually, you know what? You could, well, I'll just redo it. All right, coming down in 3, 2, 1. USC Thursday landed its 4th offensive lineman commitment for the 2018 class in Wyatt Campbell of Lugoff Elgin. He's 6'6", 285. He chose the Gamecocks over Virginia Tech and NC State. He camped at USC last Friday, impressed the coaches, earned the offer, and after not getting an offer from Clemson at camp this past Wednesday, crap, should have stuck with what I was saying. In 3, 2, 1. USC Thursday landed its 4th offensive lineman commitment for the 2018 class in Wyatt Campbell of Lugoff Elgin. He's 6'6", 285. He chose the Gamecocks over Virginia Tech and NC State. He camped at USC last Friday and picked up an offer from the Gamecocks. He camped at Clemson on Wednesday when the Tigers did not offer. That sealed his decision to go with the Gamecocks. He gives USC 8 commitments in the 2018 class. Clemson's in the final 6 with defensive back Kyler McMichael of Norcross, Georgia, with Florida State, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, and Auburn. He was at Clemson last weekend. Phil Kornblut, South Carolina, Radio Network Sports. Norcross, Georgia. He was at Clemson, Carolina, Radio Network Sports. After not getting an offer, he chose the Gamecocks over Virginia Tech and NC State. He camped at USC last Friday, impressed the coaches, earned the offer. USC Thursday landed its 4th offensive line. USC Thursday landed.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornblut, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
We are back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornblut's back in Columbia behind the fortified wall of my palatial estate in northeast Columbia. Kevin McCrary and the professor at a much more open location in the downtown Columbia on Main Street with the producer, Jared Rogers Martin. 800-956-7266 if you'd like to join us tonight here on the program, watching things transpire in round 1 of the U.S. Open. And the change at the top leaderboard has not changed. Ricky Fowler, 7 under 65, being chased by Brian Harmon at 5 under 67, Tommy Fleetwood at 5 under 67, and Brooks Koepka at 5 under 67. Those guys are all in and set for the evening. Bill McGirt, 2 under with 2 holes to go. So he's in pretty good shape. Unless he falls apart here late. Russell Henley is 1 under through 16 holes. Sergio Garcia is playing the 16th. He's 1 under. Bill Haas is 1 under through 14. Let's see who else is still active. Kevin Kisner finished 2 over 74 for him. Lucas Glover the same. Wesley Bryan 3 over with 2 to go. He's playing numbers 8 and 9 as his last 2 holes. Kyle Thompson finished at 4 over 76. And Matthew Campbell, we mentioned 5 over 77. Speaking of Wesley Bryan, we welcome in his dad, and a contributor here on Sports Talk with our Birdies and Bogeys extended edition this week because he is covering the national championship for us. It is none other than George Bryan III, and we saw Davis Love IV out there today, and he finished it under par.
Wow. That is impressive. I'll tell you what, right this minute, I'm up to my knees in fescue. I've been looking for Wesley's ball just to tell you he's only 8th hole, and it's not going good for him here. He's got a short one for bogey, and he's played really good, but a couple of times in the fescue, and he finds himself getting ready to be 4 or 5 over. You left out, and I got to tell you, I've almost got to talk in the golf voice because I'm out on the course, and there we go. He did make bogey. That's Wesley made bogey. Had to take an unplayable. I'm talking less than 6 yards off the fairway. It took 4 people to find his ball, including me standing still, and we needed a dog. So the one that could see and smell. I mean, we're talking, we're talking search parties out here, and I'm not exaggerating. It's not a matter of, I've never seen more spotters per square foot per yard, and we'll create some new math for how they'll find golf balls. But hey, William McGirt's right in front of Wesley, and he lives in Spartanburg. So William was playing really good. He was 2 under when I watched him putt out on the 6th hole, and don't know, but he's playing right in front of Wesley. And like I said, I had a little detour looking for golf balls, but the golf course is USGA fortified, meaning it's unbelievably difficult. So, and you can't speak. What I can tell you is somebody like Ricky Fowler, and I went out to watch him earlier today. He was spot on, drilling it, hitting his tee shots great, irons great, he wedges great, putted great, and he got some great hops. So it's a championship setup that I haven't seen yet. This is a first for me. Never seen anything quite like it. And have about 14 to 15 tees on every hole, and each green can be wherever they put the flag. The cool thing about it is the USGA gets to completely control whatever the score is. So they can make the score as good or as as bad as they want. So,
well, watching it from the television view, a couple of things with me. Of course, the fescue, and they even cut the fescue down, did they not? Didn't they earlier this week trim it down some? It was even higher and maybe thicker than what we're seeing on television.
Well, how you define down? I guess it's all in the how one defines it. It is like it's unplayable out here if you're in the fescue. So it's up to my knees. I'm standing in it right now, and it actually looks beautiful to look at. It looks docile, but like I said, Wesley was less than 6 steps off the fairway, and 4 people couldn't. It took them, 4 minutes to find the ball, and everybody saw exactly where it went. Completely unplayable. You can't play out of it. And so the fairways are really nice if you can hit them. The greens are perfect.
Let me ask you this, though. We've seen, like I saw Dustin Johnson playing out of the fescue. I mean, some are playing out of there. And from a golf shot standpoint, when you take a swing in that stuff and you try to get to your ball, what kind of action is happening on your golf club from that fescue?
Well, first of all, most of the guys, if you see them taking swings, understand they're taking big risks because they really don't know what they're hitting into. I've seen full swings produce nothing. I've seen full swings produce a lost ball, and it didn't come out of its position.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost a joke. Now, on the other hand, the idea is not to hit it in there. So, and so some of these guys are able to avoid it, but you're not going to play 72 holes without negotiating a little bit of it. And hey, the greens look flat. That's something else. For those out that are watching it on TV, they have no idea how undulated the greens are and how far the drop off from green level can be to the next level. So when you're watching on TV, understand it's not three-dimensional, and the greens are a long way from level. And I'm watching.
Right.
I'm watching Williams.
I was going to bring that up. One thing I've noticed too, of course, I haven't seen every hole, I don't think, but it seems to me like if you miss the green long, that there's a lot of runoff off that backside, and you're going to be a long way away from the pin.
Phil, there are a couple of holes. If you miss the green here and it rolls off the edge, I know there's one, I think it's 15-ish. You can have a full, very close to a full wedge back in. You can be 70, 80 yards off. It's, but everybody knows where those places are, and you're just not supposed to hit them there.
Right.
So,
right. Well, now let me ask you this. So we saw some guys go out earlier today and really shoot great scores. They kept it in the fairway. They made their approaches and they made their putts. But this is the U.S. Open. Are we going to see these scores back up and things get closer to level par as the tournament progresses, or can we see some numbers get into double figures here under par?
The USGA has that under their control, which is really, I think, is pretty special if you're trying to put on a championship and control every variable in that, in the tournament, including score. So I haven't really had any discussion with the officials, but they do have that. If they want the scores to be low, they will be. Can somebody shoot 10 under par for 4 rounds on this track? In perfect conditions, if the USGA says no, it's absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible.
What's the weather forecast?
It's really unique.
What's the weather forecast moving forward?
It doesn't matter because it's been wrong the whole time. They haven't even. They're like clocking in at 0.25% it being accurate. So I'm not even going to say anything. I look forward to talking to you though tomorrow night. How about that?
Okay, George. Thank you, man.
See you.
George Bryan III from the Fescue, guys. That's pretty sweet to have a report from the Fescue out there. Well, he's with his son, so that means he's probably coming up 8 or 9 as he finishes up his round. Let's see if that number on Wesley's gone up on the board. Yeah, he's now 3 over as he's playing. If this is up to date, he's playing the 8th hole, which would be his 17th hole for today, having started on the backside. All right, we'll hit a break. We're going to talk some Missouri football coming up here on Sports Talk.
why. Tell them that I love them. Tell them that I care. Tell them that I'll always be there. What color are his eyes? I don't know. He's always wearing shades.
All right, back we are, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Thanks again to George Bryan for joining us out at the U.S. Open. Deep in the fescue out there as he walks the course. Good stuff from him. He'll be back with us tomorrow night as we'll update you once again live from the course. It continues as Ricky Fowler, your leader, at 7 under 65. Let's put on our helmets for a little bit and talk some football. We continue with our series of previews of opponents for the Gamecocks and the Clemson Tigers for this upcoming season. Tonight, we look at the USC schedule. We go to the second game for the Gamecocks. It'll be their second game away from home to open the season, and their SEC opener. And no better place to open SEC play if you want to get a win than Missouri. So let's welcome in the sports director of Missouri Net, our good friend Bill Pollock.
Well, no arguments there, Corn. That's the way it's been lately. My goodness.
Well, the question is, yeah, I know. I mean, is this going to be a bounce-back year for the Tigers?
Well, they're hoping it'll be the second year of Barry Odom with his coaching staff. And, he kind of took over during a very tumultuous time. The season before that, they were struggling. And then you had the protests that took place on campus in October or November. And then there was talk about the football team. They were going to protest, and they didn't know if they were going to play their game against BYU at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, which would have been a big exposure game for them. So there was the threat of losing that game, losing $1 million of revenue. And then right before that game, they said, okay, we're going to play. Then Gary Pinkel announces that he's stepping down because of an illness. And so the season just ended on a very rough go for the Tigers. And so Barry Odom walked into a very tough situation. And they struggled. They struggled with getting off to a good start. They lost a tough game early against Georgia, in which the Bulldogs came back and beat them, and that really kind of set the tone for the rest of the season. Now, they played well towards the end of the year, but, yeah, this is certainly a season that they're looking for a bounce back after going 4-8.
So through spring practice, second go-around, much like in Columbia, second go-around with the coaching staff, everybody should be a little more settled in and have a little bit better feel for what's going on. How did they feel coming out of spring practice? Did they feel like they took a big step forward? And if so, was it more on offense or defense or both units?
Well, I think it was a little bit of both. They're always going to come away from these spring practices and say that things were positive. But I think the biggest takeaway that I got was Barry Odom seemed a little more relaxed, or at least in control. I think, last year, it's the first year, everything is kind of spinning around. He said that the biggest difference for him was just all of the administrative things that you had to take care of during the season, in addition to coaching. So I think he had a chance to kind of catch his breath, and him and his assistants have had a chance to get to know the players, vice versa. So I think things were much more relaxed, or at least in control. And I think that's a big help. And I think you can get a lot of learning done when it doesn't feel like things are being sped up, whether it's a coach or a player. So now that the players have a year under Odom, maybe that can carry over into the summer now and into fall camp, and they can get rolling.
We're talking with Bill Pollock from Missouri Net about the Missouri Tigers, and offensively, almost everybody's back except from the tight end, unless some people, I'm looking at the depth chart, unless some people have left that I'm not aware of. Is that pretty much the case? Everybody's back, and is that a good thing?
Yeah, I think it is a good thing. I think the offensive line, that was going to be the big question mark last year, and they actually played really well. And so they come back. It's another year with Drew Lock at quarterback. He was thrust into the starting role as a true freshman when Matty Mock had his off-field trouble, drug troubles. Let's just say what it was. And so he was off the team, and so you threw that kid into the fire. Then last year, he's got a new offensive coordinator in Josh Heupel, so he's trying to learn that system. Now you've got to start putting these excuses to bed. This will be his second year as a full starter, in control of the team, used to the offense. He's going to have his running back, a sophomore from Little Rock, Demarie Crockett, who rushed for over 1,000 yards, and then got in trouble for potting at the end of the season. I mean, it just it just keeps rolling on and on. The issues, but they bring back an unproven but what looks on paper to be a pretty talented wide receiver core. Jamon Moore is the senior of that team. Nate Brown, Demetrius Mason, Jonathan Johnson. I mean, these are guys that have some speed, and that was what they were lacking the last couple of years, and that's what made it difficult for Drew Lock. So now, like I said, no more excuses. You've got an offensive line that's experienced. You should upgrade at wide receiver, and if your top running back stays off the duties, you're gonna have a solid running game. So yeah, I think offensively they're gonna be solid. A lot of question marks defensively. Can they grow? The big thing with defense, they brought in DeMonte Cross, who was a good friend and ex-teammate of Odom here at Missouri. He was the defensive coordinator, came from TCU, and the guys just weren't getting the defense. They weren't catching on. And about middle of the season, Barry Odom decided that he was going to take over the defensive play calling. I disagree with this move, but he's going to continue to do that at the start of the year. I think he needs to focus on being a head coach. But if they simplify the defense and do things the way that they were under Odom, if it helps this defense, then in the long run, maybe that does help.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about that because it seemed that Missouri, even when successful under Pinkel, it was a risk-reward defense. The front four, sick 'em. But that made them susceptible to the screen pass and the good draw play. And it seemed they wanted to be more sound on defense, and they went with more read, react up front. And then Odom just said, wait a minute, that's not working. Let's go back to what Gary used to do. And that seems what the personnel they recruited are more comfortable with.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They picked up read and react under DeMonte Cross, and they weren't getting pressure up front. And you look at a guy who was a high draft pick, Charles Harris. He struggled at the beginning of the year, and finally Odom said, "You know what? Just go after the quarterback. Let's just rush them." And you're right, Pro. They are susceptible to the screen pass. They are susceptible to the draw play. But this even goes back to Dave Steckel, their defensive coordinator, and Gary Pinkel. It's don't get beat deep. Keep them in front of you. We'll let them pick up their yards, and then we'll shut you down when you get inside our 20. And they were a pretty decent red zone team under Steckel, and then that year under Odom. They switched with DeMonte Cross. They were getting beat. Their safeties were getting burned. They just weren't picking up on the defense. And I don't want to say that they scrapped it, but yeah, it certainly looked like they did that last year. I'm surprised they didn't try to go back to that. Now, they may try to add some wrinkles to what DeMonte Cross wants to bring, but they just might not have the personnel yet. And until they recruit those type of players, they'll do what Odom thinks is best.
All right, Bill, our final 90 seconds with you. So as we look ahead to the season, what are the expectations? Are the fans remaining patient, understanding there's a great deal of rebuilding going on here, and they're willing to sit back and watch that come together?
I don't know. I think that was last year. People around here, as much as, they were used to Gary Pinkel winning, and Gary Pinkel had a lot of successful years. But after his last year and Odom's stumble, that's enough. They want to start seeing some results, and 4-8 isn't going to cut it. And whether that's 6-6 in a bowl game, I think they'd be satisfied with that. But I think they want to see this Mizzou team go bowling again.
Well, we'll go ahead and get our annual wager down for the second game of the season. Our barbecue against yours. I think we're stacking up pretty well on the barbecue side of things in this cross-country competition.
You guys are fattening up, that is for sure.
Yeah. We'll have to go with the leaner brand.
Some more than
around.
others. Some more than others.
Hey, Bill, we thank you and look forward to seeing you this summer. And, of course, we'll talk more as we get closer to that game between the real Columbia and that little smaller version out your way.
Columbia, right?
Columbia, that's right. All right, my friend, thanks very much.
All right, you guys take it easy.
We appreciate it. Bill Pollock from Missouri Nets out in Jeff City, Missouri, covering the Missouri. I appreciate him giving us the lowdown on that crowd for 2017. Let's do a little recruiting after the break. We'll get to that in just a moment. Welcome back in, everybody, at Sports Talk on a Thursday night, heading towards the weekend. It's U.S. Open weekend. It's College World Series opening weekend as well. So we got a lot of stuff still going on. Racing at Michigan this weekend. We'll visit with the big man, Monty Dutton, the full Monty on NASCAR tomorrow night on that. We've got George Bryan out at the U.S. Open. We got it all covered for you here on Sports Talk. It's what we do here. Ricky Fowler went out earlier today and set the bar, 7 under 65. Harmon and Fleetwood and Koepka all at 5 under 67. Paul Casey is playing the 16th. He's at 5 under. Patrick Reed, Kevin Na, and Mark Leishman are in at 68. Xander Schauffele, is he I know nothing about him. Is he an amateur? Xander couldn't be an amateur at 4 under. Xander Schauffele, he's at 4 under, and he is still out on the course. He's an American. Know nothing about him. Trey Mullinax is on the course at 4 under, and that's the top of the leaderboard. As far as any of the South Carolina guys still playing, well, Bill McGirt's got the best score of the South Carolinians, 2 under 70. Russell Henley can match that if he birdies the 18th. He's 1 under playing the 18th. Should mention that Sergio Garcia is also 1 under playing the 18th. Bill Haas is 1 under. He's playing his 17th hole. He's on the front side. He's at number 8 finishing up. So he's 1 under. So he can finish pretty well. And let's see, local guys still playing. Wesley Bryan is now 4 over. He's playing his final hole, which is number 9. So we should be able to bring you his final total here before we go off the air tonight. Let's give you the recruiting report. As I mentioned at the outset of the show, today, offensive lineman Wyatt Campbell, 6'6", 285 of Lugoff Elgin, committed to USC over Virginia Tech and NC State. He was on the Gamecocks' radar earlier in the spring, but didn't land his offer until working out for Will Muschamp and Eric Wolford at a camp session last week. He said it just felt like home. All the schools, they impressed him. They tried everything they could recruiting-wise. He said it was just something about South Carolina that felt like home. It was his gut feeling. He'll graduate early in the Gamecock program in January. He said he and Hank Manos, another Gamecock commitment, the center from Chapin, they do plan to graduate early so they can get a quick start on things. And he said it's all about changing the culture, something he's helped do at Lugoff Elgin. He wants to do the same thing at the USC. He actually grew up a Clemson fan, and he camped in front of Dabo Swinney and Robbie Caldwell yesterday. The Tigers previously had talked to him about a gray shirt, but that was not appealing. Yesterday, when no offer came, that sealed his plans. He said a Clemson offer would have given him something to think about. He said he really doesn't know what would have happened had they offered. He would have had to sit down with his family and talk about it. It would have been between USC and Clemson, but he says, I honestly think I still would have chosen South Carolina. He said something about me was telling me that was the spot. And he said it will feel good to play against them. He said, I'm ready to beat them. He becomes the 8th commitment for the Gamecocks 2018 class and their 4th from the state. Defensive back Trey Dean of Hampton, Georgia, will not make it to USC camps this month, but he does plan to visit again at some point. USC is among his favorites, and he continues to communicate regularly with Will Muschamp and Travaris Robinson. He says they want him to commit. He says they're on his list. Alabama, Georgia, Texas, and Michigan are also on his top list. He has not taken any visits, and he has none planned at this particular time. He does not have a favorite, and he will announce on July 31st. South Point defensive back Stephen Gilmore Jr. picked up an offer from North Carolina Wednesday while camping in Chapel Hill. The Tar Heels join USC, Georgia, Duke, Louisville, East Carolina on his offer list. The UNC campus is first of the summer. He doesn't have any other visits set right now, but he wants to visit all of his offering schools, and he expects to get to USC at some point this summer. He is in touch with Travaris Robinson and Bobby Bentley from USC, and the Gamecocks like him for corner. He does not have any favorites, and he'll announce on his birthday, September 17th. Clemson is in the final 6 with defensive back Kyler McMichael from Norcross, Georgia, along with Florida State, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, and Auburn. He went to Clemson last weekend. USC offered 2019 quarterback Garrett Schrader of Charlotte, and Clemson offered 2019 defensive end Quayshawn Fuller of Fort Myers, Florida. He is a Florida State commitment. And don't forget, Sunday, DeCarrion Joyner, the quarterback at Fort Dorchester, will announce his choice. He's already made his decision between USC and NC State, and he will publicly announce which team it was. He's already told the team that he's coming, so he's a silent commitment to one of those, and he's having something at his school at 4:30. And so we'll be there to cover that, since he is one of the big names in the state and someone we've been covering throughout the entire process. And we'll bring that information to you as soon as it becomes public on Sunday afternoon, beginning at 4:30. I really hate those things, but sometimes you got to take your medication and move forward. So we'll go there for that and report back on the website and on the Twitter page at SportsTalkSC, and also the hashtag STRecruiting for the recruiting information. All right, there you go with all that for now. And we're winding down with the camps now. Clemson's Dabo Swinney, they had their final camp session this morning, so they're done, and USC is wrapping up their camps this week. Of course, the new NCAA rule limits you to just 10 camp offerings in a given summer. I think each is going to have something on July 21st. I think Clemson's having their all-in cookout on the 21st, and South Carolina's going to have a prospect gathering as well. So there'll be more things to come along those lines, and, of course, there'll be recruits dropping in and out on campuses as they make some visits here. Of course, I think there's I believe a dead period goes into effect here not too far down the line here, just before the July 4th weekend, and carries on for several weeks, so the coaches can get away on vacation and kind of put recruiting to the side for just a little while. And what a nice break that will be. Be nice just to put recruiting to the side for a little bit and not have to, if you're a coach or a player, and not have to focus on it.
Well, if you get to that early signing period, what would that do for this little vacation hole here?
They're still going to have, this early signing period is not until December. It's not like they put it in the summer or the spring like they should have. It's not until December, but they're going to allow official visits in April and May. It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But a lot of things don't make sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, you are easily confused.
Yeah, I am easily confused. I'm a simple man with a small brain, K-Mac. You don't know that by now?
Yeah, no.
Very simple man.
All too well.
But anyway, so there'll be, in fact, part of this new calendar is an extended dead period in the summer, which I think everybody's going to welcome. Now, that doesn't mean there still won't be recruiting going on. There still won't be reports on recruits, and there still won't be interaction between coaches and players via social media, text messaging, and stuff like that. But as far as in-person visits and all that, there'll be a dead period that will keep that down during that period of the summer. All right, let's see. What else did I want to mention? We pretty much have touched on everything, guys. I mean, we're at that point where we're just sort of treading water, waiting until the first real feeling of football season rolls around here in July, and we get to the media days and start getting into the serious talk about football. Just having Bill Pollock on, I believe that's a team that South Carolina K-Mac can go on the road and beat. I mean, if the Gamecocks can beat NC State in Charlotte, and I see no reason why they can't, they can go out to Missouri and win that game and come home 2-0 and really be a team that's on fire at that point.
Well, certainly, but I think they could easily lose that game.
Oh, here we go. See,
well, it's just they're an underdog.
Why do you always take the negative? Why do you always take the negative?
It's not always. I'm just pointing out, to act like that's some kind of layup game. I mean, they're playing against a team that has a great defense. It's an opener. It's going to be 150 degrees. It's not going to be an easy win.
Varsity baseball team. And it shows.
Yeah, first pitch swinging.
Members don't have a high school or a college association with baseball, but they played a lot of sandlot, and obviously they love the game. But there are a few folks here who have some pretty good credentials.
Mike Bishop now steps in. Mike Bishop right now not starting in the field. And there's also a pinch runner at first base.
All right, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. One more recruiting item. Just a little while ago, it was tweeted by my new favorite name, Fa'atui Tuitele.
That's how you say it. I was kind of close last night.
What'd you say last night?
Something like that. I don't even know.
Fa'atui Tuitele from Honolulu, defensive lineman, 6'3", 270, offered earlier by USC. Today, while at Clemson, he picked up an offer from the Tigers. So Clemson has jumped in with him as well. And look, Clemson has a history of getting players out of Hawaii. Of course, who was the big lineman that transferred out to Oregon? He had family in the upstate, and that was one of the reasons why he came to Clemson. Oh, how quickly we forget. A big defensive lineman. Was a good player. Gave Clemson some extra depth there in the defensive line.
Defensive tackle, wasn't he?
Oh,
Can't recall.
yes. Please, somebody. I have to look it up. Anyway, long way to go with this guy as far as his decision-making process. Going back to what you were saying about South Carolina and opening of the season, in my feeling that I think, well, you're saying they'll be underdogs.
Pagano.
I guess Vegas
Pagano.
is already.
Pagano.
Scott Pagano, thank you. In Vegas,
You can
I guess,
thank
is already
Reggie Anderson,
pinned them.
actually. He just texted it to me. And he also called
Okay.
you a name that I'm not going to repeat on the radio. This is a
Well,
family
see,
show.
you
This
know,
is a
but here's
family
the thing.
show.
Just by mentioning Reggie's name, do you realize now that more people have heard his name on our show in that little 15-second period than will watch him for an entire week on his television station? And so what we're doing is we're helping his career. What what he has left of it. As poor as it's been, we're aiding his career by just mentioning his name. Anyway, getting back to the more important topic at hand, South Carolina, NC State, very winnable. Yeah, I know NC State's going to have a really good defense. South Carolina's going to have a decent offensive line. In fact, I'm going to say, I think at left guard, I think Donnell Stanley is going to make them a very solid offensive line at left guard. He's going to solidify that. I think Zach Bailey's going to be fine at right tackle. If Alan Knott stays healthy, he's able to put on the good weight and muscle that he couldn't put on before last year, he's going to be improved. Corey Helms should be better at right guard after a year in the system. And we'll just have to wait and see how it works out at left tackle as they've moved their right tackle over to left tackle, Malik Young. And see how it works out for him. I think they're going to be better on the offensive line. I think completely better overall on the offense. So even though NC State will throw a very good defense at them, I expect the Gamecocks to score and to score enough to win that ball game.
Well, as I said,
and then go to Missouri and score.
Well, you said they're going to score 30 a game. So they're going to score 30 points against NC State in that great defense, one of the best defenses in the SEC. They're going to go to Missouri on the road where they have traditionally struggled and beat Missouri.
What does tradition mean? What does tradition mean?
It just means that they haven't really played well against Missouri at Missouri since Mizzou joined the conference. Well, I guess they're 2-2. They won.
Yeah.
They had the big comeback in that game, and then they lost the next two there. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And they were playing with a quarterback that had no experience and asked him to throw against looked like a torrential I shouldn't say a torrential rain.
It was like a gale force
50
wind.
mile an hour winds.
Yeah.
He was throwing
it. It was a gale force wind. For some reason, Steve Spurrier thought that what's his name? Was that
Lorenzo Nunez?
Was that Lorenzo Nunez he put in there to do that? Yeah. 3 interceptions in the third quarter. They were in that ball game. They actually at halftime were in that ball game. Had to go into the win. I was covering that game, I remember. And they came out for whatever reason. He wanted to throw the football into the wind, and it was pick.
And of course,
and Missouri had a very good defense, and they had those great defensive ends. They were tough to block.
Well, that's what I was saying. They were a feast and famine defense, though, because if you remember when the great comeback, Spurrier must have thrown 4 or 5 screen passes in a row, and they never covered it because all they tell their linemen to do is sick them. They never peel back, and so that's the feeling I get about NC State. I know NC State has a good front four. As far as their defense is concerned, the jury is still out. I know they got a good front four, but they still have been scored on by teams last year. But if you let their front four get in the game, they can. But I just think that a lot of people would think, well, we switch coaches, we have better linemen. No, I still say the more variety in the playbook is what's going to help that offensive line, not who's coaching them.
No, I disagree. I mean, I think Eric Walford is a step up in terms of day-to-day coaching, offensive line, teaching, offensive line skills. I think he proved in his 1 year at South Carolina, then going on, skipping the head coaching run at Youngstown when he wasn't able to focus on the offensive line, but going to the 49ers, I think they're going to be better coached on the offensive line, combined with that extra year of experience should make for a better group of offensive linemen across the board.
I like to see Eric Wolford coach that offensive line last year with the Pablum playbook we had, and we'll see how good he is. Because I think people saying he's that good because they want to put down the former coach. And that's
not always the case. I mean,
that is the case.
A spade. I mean, not all coaches are created equal. Some are better than others at what they do.
No, what I'm saying is let him use the same playbook as the former coach had last year when it was predictable, and see if he's a good line coach.
With a more open playbook, he's going to have more complexity to what he has to coach.
If you were given the former coach that, maybe the offensive line plays better because they're less predictable.
But you could. I mean, you had to deal with the hand that was dealt. And the fact was they were using a kid that should have been in high school as quarterback the last 7 games of the season, and they couldn't afford to be complicated on offense.
That's why
they
I'm saying.
Couldn't afford to allow him to change the plays.
So the offensive line coach was hamstrung because the offense.
That's got nothing to do though with maybe perhaps a lack of development in fundamentals and skills toward being a better offensive lineman, does it? I mean, you either know the fundamentals and are properly coached and taught them, or you're not. It's got nothing to do with the playbook.
Well, yes, it does. If I'm sitting there as a defensive coordinator and I know what the play is right at the snap, the way you're lined up, don't tell me that doesn't affect the offensive line.
I'm not saying that, but what's that got to do with fundamentals? You know, fundamentally putting your head in the right place, your hand, your foot movement, torquing your body the right way. These are things that are taught regardless of your playbook.
Yeah, and you're saying the other guy couldn't coach. Why did John Gruden tell Spurrier he's a good young offensive line coach?
Listen, I'm just saying I think Eric Wolford is an excellent offensive line coach.
I'm not disputing
Maybe
that.
A little bit better from that standpoint, X's and O's, than Sean. Sean may be a much better head coach than Eric Wolford was. I mean, you know, he got fired at Youngstown State. Sean may go to Georgia State and win the Sun Belt and get them, you know, into the playoffs one day. Who knows? I'm just saying, head-to-head offensive line coaches, I think Eric Wolford was a great hire by Will Muschamp, and South Carolina is going to benefit from having him there with the offensive line, with a full playbook with which to play.
Did a great job at San Francisco. What was San Francisco's record?
Oh, now you're blaming him for the 49ers losses?
Are
you blaming him?
No, but what I'm saying is everybody.
You just did. You just said what was their record. He did a great job. What was their record?
Everybody plays that game, though. That's why I'm saying you can't compare the coaches. But I'm telling you, people saying that about Wolford to put down the previous coach.
There you go, Corn. You got served.
I'm not.
You got
That
served.
is not what I am saying. You can say maybe others are, not the Corn.
Owned.
Okay. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.